Just in time, yes, you're right. Let's see what my phone says. Okay, my phone says 22, so we will start. Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. I did not realize that NDC were doing sessions quite this late. So congratulations for still being here and not just going for drinks instead, because I would totally do that. Or just go home as well, I mean, legit. Anyway, as you can see by this amazing, I want to call it Photoshop, but it's not. I used paint. As this amazing piece of artwork here shows, today I am going to talk about how you can be more friendly with your security team, which I know is traditionally not a thing we do. But who am I? If you've never seen me talk things before, my name's Sarah Young. I am a principal cloud security advocate, whatever that means. And I live here in Melbourne, which means I just got to drive here, which was so cool because I never get to do that for events. I use a lot of memes. This is one of my very memey talks. Hopefully you understand the references, or if you don't, just pretend like you do and humor me. I have a couple of dogs. They're really cool. Basically, that's why all my stickers are sheeps. I did try and concoct a plan to bring them into the talk, seeing as I'm in Melbourne, but I couldn't think of a way that legit I could do it. And I feel like this place is serious enough that they'd probably get kicked out because they are not service dogs. So I left them at home. Anyway, this is what we're going to talk about. I'm going to give you a bit of a history, security versus the rest of IT, how that came about. You've probably all got your own thoughts on that. We'll talk about the changing threat landscape and we'll throw off some scary stats because we love stats. And then let's talk about how we can be more collaborative. And then, because it's no tech talk nowadays if we don't add this, how can we get AI right the first time? And then I've put Q&A. I don't really think this is the kind of talk that has a Q&A, but if you have a question at the end, you sure can ask me. This is more of a just nod and laugh at the memes. At least I feel they put me on at the end of the day because at least I'm easy to listen to and I'm not gonna put complicated code up for you. Maybe. Let's go with that. Anyway, before we start, I always ask this question when I come to dev conferences, and you may have seen it before if you've been in one of my talks at NDC, but raise your hand if you ever feel that you have been personally victimized by security. Pretty much everyone, yeah, I'm pretty much 100%. And obviously that's a Mean Girls reference. Obviously, pretty much, I'd say that was, I can't do maths. Let's just go 95% of the room. And I don't think I've ever asked this question when I come to non-security conferences and everyone puts their hands up. That's because security is historically terrible at dealing with the rest of IT. I admit this, I apologize. Oh, I forget, I've got a mic. And it's the rest of the business as well. But what I promised today is that anyone who would consider themselves a security person in the room. I actually know there's a few of you. Someone's I don't know if I want to associate with you, so I'll wiggle my hand. This isn't just a roast of security, and we're going to look at positive actions that both folks can do. But as we're a developer conference, of course, we'll be focusing on devs. So let's look at the history. This is just Sarah's next 6 slides of memes, because we love that. Like I said, this is an easy talk for the end of the day, and we probably won't go for an hour as well. So I won't get between you and Richard Campbell, who is an infinitely better speaker than me. But here we go. You may have seen some of these fake O'Reilly memes before. I cannot take credit for this particular one, actually. This was actually done by a friend of mine in New Zealand a number of years ago. It may resonate with you. It resonates with me, certainly. And the point here, of course, is that traditionally security have been seen as the know people, the business prevention officers, and the rest of IT, devs, and the rest of IT have been trying to find ways to go around us, as you say, how to ignore it and deliver your project. When I worked in previous jobs before Microsoft, and I worked in internal security, I had a lot of project managers who were definitely trying to find ways around us. But I think this was a very typical attitude. Oops, oh no, I ruined the surprise, I haven't finished. This was a very typical attitude, maybe pre-2013, 2014. And then there was a bit of a shift, and there are a few reasons for that. But the main one was then we had quite a lot of high-profile breaches. And by high-profile breaches, I mean not just within our industry, the tech industry, but things that the whole world paid attention to. So in particular, I'm thinking about Walmart, which was 2015, Equifax was 2017, and then we can't forget the good old Sony hack of 2014, which was largely attributed to North Korea. Now, those things hit the mainstream media, and security started to get more in the forefront of everyone's minds, because I know we all talk about it now, but do you remember there was a time when most people didn't think about it at all? I mean, I know there's still arguably some people who don't, but you know what I mean. Like, except now you're willingly, I think now you're like purposely ignoring it as opposed to like, but I think as well, like, a lot of people were like, oh yeah, it's not going to happen to us. It's not going to happen to us. Why would someone want to hack me or my business or blah, blah? Well, I'm going to call out, because I know there's people from here, New Zealand. You guys are still pretty bad at thinking that, but so I lived in New Zealand for a long time. I absolutely love New Zealand, but Kiwis are so chill, and they're just like, why would someone hack me? And the answer is because they can. So this is something that we saw back, sort of, like I said, I'd say pre-2013, 2014. And then I had to throw in one of my own. I made this one. So, you know, make your security team go away, the definitive guide for devs. Get them off your back so you can code. And that's because one of the main problems, and we kind of know this, but I think we don't talk about it explicitly enough, is that security and devs are incentivized and have two very different goals. Devs want to be creative and build things. Security wants to check and do things more slowly. So ultimately, it's natural that we sort of clash up against each other because we're not kind of being measured and targeted on the same kind of things. And this is where this tension comes from. And then we have enter agile and cloud. So, you know, when that happened, when cloud happened, I don't know, can I put a date on that? 2015, 2016? You might disagree with me, but when cloud happened and agile, for those people who did do security properly, or did it, had more mature processes, so government, banks, well, financial services, they had very thorough processes that had very defined stage gates, and security was slow, and it took a long time because we would check everything. And that was okay before Agile and Cloud, because you would only do a software release, every 6 months, every year. And then we flipped that and we're like, let's go faster. And so then security was stuck with this problem. We were trying to do all of these checks, but now we were being asked to do them every day, every week, to all these little incremental changes. And you can't go through a tooth comb with everything if you're changing things once a day, once a week, etc. So we all had to rethink ourselves again. Now, and cloud, of course, cloud was actually every security person's nightmare back in the day, because before, and I do remember this very early on in my career, if you wanted a new VM, you had to request it. Someone had to build it or spin it up, you know, in VMware, blah, blah, for you in your company's data center. And then we had cloud, and you can just press go and it spins something up in minutes, which was great. But for security, absolute nightmare, because we had no idea what people were building anywhere. So that was a problem too. And essentially what happened is the businesses that were considered mature in security, suddenly their processes were massively out of whack with what the rest of the business was trying to do. And for those people who adopted cloud quickly, I mean, as far as security was concerned, their cloud was often just a complete Wild West. Like, no one knew what was there, no one knew what it was doing, no one had any idea if it was vulnerable, which, you know, the answer is it was. And so, yeah, so, you know, it meant that things could go off the rail more frequently. And then we've got to put in the classic, this is a security one that we love. I'm sure all of you know Jurassic Park. This is super relevant to that shift in IT, but obviously this is a security talk. You know, people were spinning things up. They were doing new things just because they could. Oh, that sounds familiar. Maybe this is what we're doing with AI right now. I don't know. It is. But this is also the birth of shadow IT. Now, shadow IT is a very security-ish sort of phrase. If you're not familiar with shadow IT is basically people using things that are not sanctioned by the organization you work in, and no one knows if they're okay, if they're safe, etc. Again, security person's nightmare. When I used to work for a bank years ago, we had beef with Evernote. Now, I personally do not have beef with Evernote, I have to say, but lots of people were using Evernote and pasting stuff in, and we didn't know what it was doing, where it was going, and it was a real concern for us. So, you know, all of this cloud computing meant shadow IT was really easy because you could just add things from anywhere. I always remember, I'm just going to tell like stories this evening because that's what I feel like doing. When I lived in New Zealand, again, I'll have to like sort of make this very vague. When I lived in New Zealand and I was a consultant, I worked for a customer who had just gone and procured a completely random web platform from the US, and it was a startup, and they had about 2 people, and then they brought us in to do a security audit. So I was emailing one of their 2 people and was like, hey, so what do you do about this? And they were like, well, AWS takes care of that. And we're like, no, that is not how this works. They take care of the underlying stuff, but what do you do on top? And they were like, I literally had like silence for about 2 weeks, and I was like, cool. I see. And then last one, you're bored of the memes, but we'll finish off with this amazing piece of art that I did in Paint again. This is, if you do, that's Mr. Robot, if you haven't seen that series. Good series, by the way, technically very accurate compared with something like CSI Cyber, which please don't. Do you know what I watched? Again, I'm just, like I said, I'm just tangenting because it's the evening. I watched that Christmas movie with The Rock with a friend of mine who was not in tech just before Christmas, and they said something like, we're going to put a Trojan on the IP tracker, and I was like, what? Pause, and I was like, rewind, and I was like, I have to write down this exact phrase because it's so wrong. Like, anyway, it's called Red One or something. It's like Santa getting stolen, or we needed something easy to watch, okay? But yeah. As you know, a lot of stuff online is not technically accurate. So anyway, Mr. Robot is, so go watch it. They obviously got a good advisor for that. This is Alien versus Predator. As you can see, I've changed it to security versus developer. I mean, that photoshopping is just exquisite. But the reason that I liked this one and why I picked it is because it says, whoever wins, we lose. And the point being that if we go up against each other, security versus devs, no one actually wins because there is nothing to win, except sometimes when you've had months or years of really entrenched behaviors, this is what people feel like. There's something to win, and you have to beat the other team, or you have to work in silos and not be collaborative. And I think that's a real shame because like I said, nobody wins if we do that. So I did have a serious point to my badly Photoshopped stuff. Okay, so before I go any further, if you've ever been to one of my talks, you may have seen this slide, so I apologize, but it's a good slide and it has lots of scary stats on it. But I just want to talk about the threat landscape, particularly for those of you who are kind of more in the dev space and don't often see these. So we talk a lot, and I'm going to put the whole slide up just so you can read it as I talk, because that's probably easier. No, too far. And the point here is, this is like real research. That's in US dollars, by the way. And the point is that attack services are really cheap. You do not need to know very much, and you don't need a lot of money to go attacking people. So we worry a lot about 0 days. Now I'm going to start at 0 day on the top there. So you can see that to do a 0 day or create or develop a 0 day, it will cost from something like $5,000 to $350,000. It's expensive because you need a lot of tech talent, you need a lot of time to develop a 0 day. And then your 0 day will probably only last for a teeny tiny amount of time when you release it into the wild because someone will patch it. So whilst you should be scared of them and concerned, actually, as we go around, you will see that kind of perspective-wise, it's not the thing you should worry about. So let's go around the room. A ransomware, $66 up front to buy your own ransomware kit on the dark web, or not even necessarily on the dark web nowadays. Or, and this one's amazing. So you can get people online on the dark web to do the ransomwaring for you. And so it is effectively ransomware as a service, literally. And then when your victim pays up, they will take 30% of the profit and clip the ticket. Love that. No, this is real too. So spear phishing, if you don't know what spear phishing is, it's like when you target someone in particular. So rather than phishing where you do, hello, I'm a Nigerian prince, I leave you my entire fortune, you just need to send me $100. Spear phishing is when they very deliberately target a person. They might go on your social media and craft something, work out who your colleagues are, and spoof an email from a very specific person. AI makes spear phishing very easy because it does all of that work for you. And we've seen that as proof of concepts. Researchers have gone and said things like, please write an email in the style of this person, and it's gone through all their stuff and written it to make it more convincing, which is very scary. But you can pay people to do that as well. So it's about $100, $1,000, pretty cheap. Compromised accounts. Now, okay, confess, it's the end of the day. Actually, no, I was saying we're not being recorded. We are, but we are being recorded. But confess your sins to me. Who here uses the same email and password combination somewhere in their life still? Come on, and the rest of you are lying. Like, yeah. Oh, I have a password manager. I think I've got rid of all the duplicate combinations now, but I would not stake my life on it. Anywho, so if you use the same username and password combination anywhere, and then somewhere that you use it gets compromised, then it can be reused. And you can buy compromised accounts for like $100 and you get 400 million of them. It's insane. Do you remember, everyone remembers the Ashley Madison breach, yeah, back in the day? So the company that I worked for at the time, not Microsoft, one of the guys in my team downloaded the dump, and then we went and searched through to see how many work email addresses we could find at our employer. We found more than I was comfortable with, let me tell you. Would you sign up for a website like that on your work email address? Apparently so. And denial of service. We love a good old denial of service. Look, if you buy more of it, if you buy a month compared with a day, look at the savings. Also, though, I have a friend who worked for one of the CERTs in a country I will not name. If you don't know CERT, it's the Cyber Emergency Response Team. Most governments have them. They usually have like a more government department one and one specifically for the public. And do you know what their number one call was? And this is from individual members of the public rather than businesses about cyber. You probably heard this one before. You've heard that story. You can't answer, Mish. So it is teenagers DDoSing each other at Fortnite. Oh yeah. So because for as little as $1, you can get a very basic DDoS service entirely within the pocket money of a teenager, and you can basically you can DDoS your competitor and knock them out so you can win. This is a thing. It does happen. Happened to my cousin when he was 14. Bless him. Bless his heart. He was so worried because this kid was like, I'm gonna hack you. And I was like, he's not. Chill out. Like, you're fine. But yeah, that's the thing. But think about this. Although we laugh and I tell the story because it is very funny, but it is true. If teenagers can buy attack services, because that's what DDoS is, if our teenagers can buy attack services, think what, just to knock each other out at a silly video game, think what someone who was more motivated could do. The point being of this slide and this talk track that I give many, many times is the fact that you don't have to be, and this is what the media portrays, you don't have to be some amazing hardcore hacker to be able to pull off some of this stuff now. You can effectively buy it off the shelf. And this is exploiting very basic stuff. Some of it's like basic stuff that we've known about for a long time, but it still happens again and again and again. And I just wanted to set the scene. We couldn't do a security talk with no security figures and stuff. And the research shows time and time again, I won't go on about this one, but if we did the basics right, so multi-factor, least privilege, keeping things up to date, protecting your data, if everyone did all of those really boring, well, not glamorous, basic things right, all the research shows from kind of pretty much every company out there that 95 to 98% of breaches would not happen if all of this stuff was done properly. So although, and when I get to AI, I'll talk about it, although we talk about all the shiny new things and interesting new threats that are out there, the fact is that this really boring, non-shiny stuff, the stuff like coding securely, supply chain security, all of that stuff is actually what will protect us the best. And then last thing I'll mention, I'll put the whole thing up, is that boundaries have changed now. So this is kind of coming into what I was talking about before. It used to be that we'd have a data center. I shouldn't have clicked through that. I'm going to do that. Yeah. So we used to have a data center. I used to spend lots of time in data centers and in company data centers rather than a vendor. And then we started to expand that boundary. You don't need 5 firewalls, by the way. I just want to point that out. We started to use mobile devices, and then we started using SaaS. You know, it could be G Suite, could be M365, whatever. And then we started doing bring your own device. Can you remember when bring your own device was like an absolute nightmare scenario? Did anybody ever use the management thing called Good that wasn't good? Does anyone remember Good? I don't know if Good is still around. I used it at one of my old works, and let me tell you, Good was not good. And then Internet of Things, depending on your industry. Oh, why am I not clicking right today? But the point being that after I actually clicked way too fast then. Okay, one more. Oh, never mind. I thought they came up separately. So the point being here is that then we had cloud, and you can see that the perimeter has completely changed. So we can't just say, oh, chuck it behind 10 firewalls and you're good, and keep it network-based. Now we have to use stuff like identity and stuff, because that's the only way we can actually tie all these different things together. And this is my tiny bit of security stuff that I shall impart to you during this talk. And now, but I think it's an important point to make, is that because when I have conversations with other parts of IT, sometimes they're still like, oh, well, we've got a firewall, or oh, we'll just put a network control in. And you're like, yeah, that's not going to cut it anymore. It really isn't. So I like to just chuck in a little bit of stuff like that. But let's go back to what I was, the kind of main point of this talk. We've looked at theory, we've looked at the threats out there. So this is all very real and present. So how do we work better together? So we want security and the rest of IT to be friends, and not reluctant friends where your parents have said go play nice in the corner, otherwise, you know, no sweets or whatever, like actual friends. So we're talking, because I'm an aging millennial, we're talking Ash and Pikachu level friendship forever and ever. This is what I want to see. Yeah, I am an elder millennial apparently, but this isn't a tech problem. So I know I just talked about tech and some security controls, because I like to do that. But this working together and being collaborative is not a technology problem. There is nothing, technology is pretty black and white in my opinion. And we know, and the fact is that no system or tech is 100% secure, but it can be made a damn sight less secure by people not doing the right thing. They are by far and away the hardest thing to deal with. And I say, for someone who works in a technical job like me, I spend a lot of time talking about people's feelings, because it's true. A lot of time talking about people's feelings. And like I said, implementing a technical security control is relatively black and white. We turn on the control, we turn off the control, and either from a technical perspective, a control is on or it is off. It might be misconfigured, but other thing. But when we put a control on, then it can have downstream effects on people and teams, and that can be to do with processes and people rather than the tech. And I think what we've not done as a security industry, so I take this on behalf of the security industry, is that we have not considered, you know, when we put in something, the effects it's had on people. I'll give you a perfect example. When I was walking my dogs this morning, my friend who is a surgeon texts me, and she's like, how do I install a password manager on my machine, and my work machine? I don't have admin rights. And I was like, well, you can't. Well, I probably could maybe do it for you, but like, you can't. And she was like, but I don't want to copy and paste in a gazillion passwords. And I was like, well, of course you don't. And I was like, you're going to have to go and ask them if they'll let you, install it maybe as an exception, or if they have a password manager. But of course, they don't. And this is like the problem is we have a slidey bar, security and productivity. And the reality is that most organizations have slid to one extreme of the slidey bar, when really we need to be sat somewhere in the middle. So, and that's when the peopling comes into it. But I don't know if you've heard of this. The 3 key components of intrinsic motivation. Now, intrinsic motivation is driven by, we're getting into psychology now. It's internal rewards and personal satisfaction rather than external factors. And these are the 3. If you don't have one of these things in something you're doing, the theory is that you just don't care. You just won't care. You won't be invested in it. So obviously, when we're talking about autonomy, the need to direct your own life and work, when we're talking about working with security, that one's not great because essentially, security are probably going to tell you what to do to a point, going with standards and best practice. Mastery, there are at least some people out there. Does anyone here have a security champion in their orgs or something like that? See, security champions might want to master security, and that's how they feel invested. But I think the easiest one to explain here, and the one that makes the most sense for most people, is purpose. As it says, working towards something larger and important than oneself. Now, we have messed this up, and I think everyone is guilty of this. I know I am. That we often, when we start to work in silos, security people will be like, I'm doing this to secure the organization. This is my purpose in life. I'm doing security because security, which obviously is stonewalling some other team. But actually, if you roll it up, all teams in IT and all business things, we're there to support an organization doing something, whether that's, and I'm going to throw this phrase out there, whether it's creating shareholder value. Well, it is true. It is true. If you're a commercial company, if it's to make money, if you're a government agency, if it's to serve the citizens of your country, that ultimately is what a business is doing, or an organization, and IT supports that. And security is just one of those things. And I actually give a version of this talk to security people as well, because historically we have dug our own grave a bit for this as well, because we're not pushing and encouraging that collaboration. And ultimately, because everyone's working towards whatever your organization is. Let's go shareholder value. Well, everybody wants to walk towards that. But also, every team doesn't have the same incentives. I'm sure you all have goals that you set. So developers, it's build things, go quick, build, hit your release goals, get things out. Security is like, we don't want things to go wrong, keep things secure. And then PMs, you probably keep projects on time, keep them on budget. So again, very different incentives, and when that misalignment happens, it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture and start to go into that siloed thing. So we always need to sort of take a step back and actually see what we're ultimately doing. Security does not need to take responsibility. This sounds weird, but stick with me. It's actually wrong if security are taking responsibility for the security of an organization. We are there to advise people who get paid way more in leadership to decide if something is the right course of action to do, and make sure they understand the risks. We are not there to absolutely make sure nothing ever happens. That's wrong, but many security people still think that. And then how we approach problems have changed as well, because back in the day, it would be, we would chuck it over the fence. When we were working more siloed, you'd be like, did I put the meme in? Oh, I didn't. The girl with the burning house, like ops problem now, worked in test, prod problem now, whatever. So that's what we used to do. We'd be like, oh, work for us, sorry, your problem, or get a tool. Whereas now, particularly with security, but I'd argue with everything, is that we need to be more design-centric up front, because systems are so much more complicated. Loading these things in as an afterthought is even harder than it used to be. And it was never easy to start with. We need to, when there's friction, when there's friction between teams, we're just not respecting the constraints in which other teams work. And it's really important. If you just say no to a dev team, you're stopping them achieving their goals because they want to build things. And if you go, as a dev, if you go to security and say, I just got to build this right now, give me the MCP server I've built my own authorization server for an MCP thing. That one's just top of mind for me at the moment. I've been looking at MCP for the last 2 weeks. If you didn't know, MCP merged in a spec over the weekend, and now it can use an external server as an identity provider. Yes. I say an external server, I mean, like a proper identity provider like Entra, Okta, whatever. Go look at that if you're doing MCP. But, okay, so here's some things. Try learning each other's languages. I know this is controversial, but okay. So this is as you can see, I'm just going the memes. Look, I'm not saying suddenly that IT need to start talking about security controls and risk all day. Not at all. That's not your job. But maybe learning the concept of how security look at something is really useful. So it's story time again. So before, again, in pre-Microsoft days, because I can never tell a Microsoft story, it's not true, but it's actually my more interesting ones are further back. I worked as a consultant for a company, a large telco, and they had a team who were taking older services, basically chunking them up into microservices and putting them in the cloud. And it was quite new for that organization at the time. And I was working with the devs, and I was helping them get their security documentation in order for the security architects to review it, because they had to document it all. It would be sent to security architecture for review. They would make comments, and then if they got the thumbs up, they could deploy it. So the first copy I got, and it was a standard template that they used, and so they drew up the microservices, they listed all the components, pretty standard design document, and they had a list of all the connections and the type of protocol that the components were talking in. Anyway, one of them was Telnet. Yeah, love it. Yeah, it was really old, and basically some of these things were really being shoehorned into the cloud. In fact, these guys were very talented because some of this stuff was so old and creaky. I'm amazed they managed to get it to run. But anyway, there was two components that were talking to each other in Telnet, which is obviously like every security person's just like straight away. But it was so old and so clunky. I said to them, "Hey guys, is it possible for you to like upgrade it to anything that's like not in clear text?" Wouldn't do it. It was very old. So, but what they had written they were fully aware that Telnet is not good. What they had written in the documentation was, "This is safe," and I was like, do you want to elaborate on that? Because I was like, if you send this to the security architecture people, they're just going to like drop down dead. And they said, well, it's safe because it's in, basically what they were trying to say was it's low risk because although yes, these two components are talking in Telnet, they are all wrapped up in another system, and it would be, in theory, very difficult for someone to get to that traffic to intercept it. And I was like, cool, so you have thought about it, but you've literally just written in your documentation, this is safe. So we had a chat about how we articulate these things. So this is the point. I am definitely not saying you need to like suddenly learn everything about security controls, but being able to speak a little bit of each other's languages can really reduce confusion. But you know what? Fun, heartwarming end to this story. After we'd been through a couple of these and I'd sort of pulled the folks up and I'd sort of given them some feedback on how they needed to articulate these things, they really got the hang of it. And then they used to fly through, and we got 10, 15 of them through like no problem, and security architecture were just like woo. So hooray. It very much can work, but it just does take a little bit of patience, because if I'd have done my knee-jerk reaction maybe 10, 15 years ago when I started and seen something that just read Telnet is safe, I'd be like, yeah. But you know, sometimes it's just a language thing. It's not that people don't understand. In fact, usually it's never the case. An understanding that we need defense in depth. This is something that I would very much like everyone to understand. So it's also called the Swiss cheese model. Outside of security, it's actually known as reasons model, because it's actually used for safety and things like mining and medicine and stuff too. And the idea is that if you're not familiar with this, or if you've never had it explained to you properly, because it's actually very straightforward, is that in order to have proper security, because no one security control can work and will work 100% of the time, is that you have multiple layers. So we'll have network, then we'll have identity, then we might have some data stuff. And the idea is that for a breach to happen, all of these holes in the Swiss cheese model have to line up. And the more layers you have, different layers, not 5 firewalls, is the idea is that this will reduce the likelihood this is going to happen. We can never say 100% it won't, but that's the idea. You know, I think some of these concepts, as you can see, I think they're very straightforward, and I think that security has traditionally been very gatekeepy at explaining these things at the right level to what people need to know. And then on the other side of the house as well, for the security folks out there, I'm not saying join stand-ups and start a Jira board. Well, I had a Jira board at one of my old works, but learn a bit of what the devs are trying to do. I really think I am very lucky that I get to work with a gentleman called Michael Howard. If you know his name, it's because he wrote one of the first secure coding books ever in like the early 2000s. He's the coolest guy. I love him. And he's still working in security. He's been at Microsoft for about 33 years now. And he says that he thoroughly believes, and I don't disagree with him, that every security person should know the basics of programming, like the fundamentals. Even if you're not doing AppSec or whatever, it's really important. And I do agree with him. Did you see there was a guy in Japan making these like a few months ago, and I just was really into them and wanted to put them on the screen? Okay. So for the rest of IT, here's some things. Look, for the rest of IT, if you go to security and you want to get them to do something for you, come and make sure, just show them you've done some homework. So if you bring a tool and just go, I want to use this, please. And then we ask you maybe some just basic questions like, who has built it? Where did it come from? What support does it have? And have you thought about how to fit it into your current architecture, or just you want to throw it in the pile? If you can answer these and show that you have thought things out, I'm not saying you need to have done hours and hours, but that you've actually given it some consideration and done your homework, you're going to get a much better response out of security. Because if you come to them and go, I don't know where it comes from, I don't know, I just want to install it really and just see what happens. It's even like a psychological thing. Immediately, they'll kind of be on the defensive with you. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know all the terms. But just remember, you can help yourself be more successful in these interactions as well. And then for the security people, look, see, yes, this is it. Look. If you can build guardrails or design patterns that people have to reference rather than them kind of going in the dark and just saying, I think this is how I do it because I found a code snippet online. If you can give them something better than that aligns to what you want, that's going to help a lot. And remember, when devs are building something, they are building something that's solving a problem, solving a pain point. Like they're not just doing it for shits and giggles, And you shouldn't coach people to do things the right way. And then finally, make no expensive. I have to say, this is not my phrase, but I think it's really good. You should only say no if there's no other choice. It shouldn't be an irregular vocab. So finally, what about AI? So, well, obviously everyone's already doing AI, I'm sure, but it's got its own challenges, and obviously the non-deterministic nature is challenging for a number of reasons, but definitely in security. But this is a chance for all of us to get it right the first time. I think compared with another previous mass adoptions of new technology, I think a lot more people are thinking about security. I know I get asked a lot of things. So I think we're going in the right direction, but we really need to do the AI. Yeah, I knew I had this in the, I was like, where is this in the deck? Look, we don't want to throw AI things over the fence like we have done with other things in the past. So look, I'm going to say on behalf of your security people, we want you to use cool new tech. Of course we do, but make sure you've considered the risk. You're not, the non-deterministic nature thing is very interesting. And I'm not going to say, because this is changing so quickly, like I said, I was talking about MCP, that changed at the weekend. There's a lot of new things coming out. Let's take MCP because it's topical. So MCP came out, I started hearing about it maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. Obviously, if you're not familiar, it's basically, if you haven't heard of it, it's like a spec essentially that's like USB for AI. It's giving a nice standard way to interface to tools and sources. And it's open source. It's made by, Anthropic are kind of leading it, but it is open source. And it's an absolute nightmare from a security perspective because it's not. depends. But it's a brand new spec. It's only just being developed. So unsurprisingly, it has few security features. Until the weekend, just this past, you couldn't integrate it to any kind of identity provider. You had to write your own authentication server, which we have been telling people to not do for a very, very long time. So that has changed now, and I know, same with any new spec, it will change as things go on, but we need to be mindful of these things. There was quite a lot of chatter about, did people hear about MCP tool poisoning? No? I've been very wrapped up in MCP. I was talking about MCP today, whether you want to hear about it or not. But MCP tool poisoning is actually, it's basically MCP servers advertise sets of tools to LLMs that they have, so they can say, hey, I got this data, do you want to use it? And then, depending on the prompt, it would go fetch it. But the tool poisoning is when they embed malicious instructions in the tool. It's actually a variant of indirect prompt injection attacks. So that's when you say get a Word document, put some malicious instructions in it, you tell the LLM to summarize the document, and then it processes the malicious instructions on the quiet. That's an indirect prompt injection, or an example. So it's very interesting, but it's stuff we already know about. So, okay, that's a pretty boring piece about AI. It's very generic, but I had to add it in, but there is a bit more. So, some breaking news. AI is just an application. So AppSec rules still apply, an AppSec that we have traditionally not done very well. So SBOM, using identity, secure coding practices, all of these still apply. In fact, these are way more relevant to the majority of people out there because most of you will be using an AI platform provided by a third party, whether it's Azure or whoever. And most of the AI-specific attacks, not all of them, but a lot of them, sit down at that platform layer. So for a provider like us, we have to worry about them. You not so much. And then data. Okay, this has literally been the thing I've talked about probably the most for the last year, which is AI makes finding data really easy. So yeah, this is my favorite at the moment because that meme has been going around too much. But data classification has been a problem for a long time. No one's done data security right for a really long time. But now AI makes it much easier to find that information that you did not classify or have ever classified. And suddenly it's coming more to the top of people's lists for things to do. So as devs, I'll just give you a shout out. You might be asked to integrate more things, more data security tooling going forward. It's a good thing, I promise. But historically, we've been really bad at it. So, in conclusion, there's my little fun thing. Collaboration is first and foremost a people problem. It is not to do with technology at all. Technology is easy. Security needs to feel safe to go fast. Look, there are various different security people out there. There are still some people who are very old school and very no focused. I think we're getting much better as time goes on, that attitude is going away. But try and do what you can to win over your security team. Just let them know that you actually checked where something came from. You've thought about how it's going to fit in. Just make them feel good a little bit. Try and find a shared language, or find shared phrases, whatever it is, or learn each other's languages a bit so you can talk about problems. Like I said, Telnet is safe. Just think Telnet is safe from now on. And then, don't think that, actually. Please don't think that, but think about the gentleman who wrote in my document, Telnet is safe. And create an environment where people aren't scared of failing. Or whatever they're measured on, because ultimately, if we take it down to individual needs, we talked about the organizational thing, that creating shareholder value or whatever it is. But if you take an individual and what they're motivated by, they probably want to be successful at their job. So if you're pushing them to do something that's maybe outside their general wheelhouse, they might be scared of failing, and then you get friction, and it all snowballs into one thing. AI is the perfect place to start because we're all building lots of that at the moment. So go hug your security team today. No. But this is I wanted to leave you with one final security quote that is my favorite. I like this. It's from a former FBI director. Security is always seen as too much until the day it's not enough, which I think is very, very apt. And I think by all of us, not just those of us who work in security, but all of us accepting that security can seem like a bit of a chore, but a necessary chore, I think, and I'm going to get so like we're getting so far out of tech now. We can all process those feelings because it's a thing, and just accept it for how it is, and then find our motivation for why we should, all of us as an IT function, get it right as a team. Because ultimately, we have a security breach, everybody suffers, not just the security team. So that's me done. I actually went for longer than I thought. Thank you for sticking with me until like 6:25, folks. I hope it was worth it. If not, just give me a green card anyway, lies. But come and get stickers. I have many dog stickers and stuff. I'll hang around. It's not really a questiony kind of talk, but you can come and ask me questions anyway if you want. And yeah, thanks very much for coming.